everybody hear me? Okay. Let's see. I got 2 yeses. Okay. So we still have 2 that I don't know about. I'm trying to log in on my phone and iPad, and it's not cooperating very well. Okay. And this will take about the full hour. So let's see if I can get on. Okay. Yeah. Trying to get on 2 different devices, and it is not. They're going incredibly slow this morning. Hopefully they're not playing with everything from the storms on Thursday that came through. Okay. I'm gonna have to contact WebEx support to figure out easy ways for the audio to work. Last night, there's only 1 student that was having issues, so still trying on 2 different devices, so okay. Okay, so basically this is basically what we're gonna do is go over my expectations and then go over a little bit about accounting, what it is, what it isn't, go over some sample transactions. Let me share my webcam. Pardon the look, it's Saturday and I don't feel like dressing up. So this is me on a lovely Saturday morning. Oops. Let me get back to where I was. Okay. My computer is deciding to be a pain. There we go. Okay. So let's get started. Okay. So course setup. Is anyone a first quarter student? Anybody first quarter? Okay. So course setup, it's pretty much your standard Harrison setup. So let me go to the class. So basically, it's the standard Harrison setup. There's nothing new. Make sure you do go through the announcements that I have posted. Those are going to help notice when assignments are due. So definitely watch and look at those. There are sometimes videos in there, not very often, but it will go through and tell you when assignments are due and what assignments are due for that specific week. Homework expectations, go over parts of CNOW, we're going to go as part of CNOW, we're going to go over MindTap. It does have some amazing features that a lot of students don't know about. Go over what accounting is and is not. Why study accounting besides the common, I have to take it to graduate. So a lot of majors do require at least accounting 1. Go over the elements of accounting, which a lot of you have talked about in your week 1 discussion post. Your week 2 discussion post. We're going to analyze 4 different transactions. They are transactions from your homework, so there is nothing new there. Go over the financial statements, what the best page at this point is to find the financial statements. For a sample when you're doing your homework, go have a quick question answer session, as well as closing thoughts, basically what's coming up in the class. So if you have any questions during the conference, please stop me. Feel free to interrupt me, ask your question. If you don't want to ask it out loud, which a lot of students don't, feel free to put it in the chat area. So it's completely up to you. If you don't feel like asking a question in the conference, feel free to text me or email me the question later. So I'm very open to questions. So the first poll is basically, what do you think accounting sounds like? So let me open up that poll. Do you think it sounds boring, challenging, interesting, or a hard work? So we have challenging and interesting. It is definitely not boring. I will give you that. It can be challenging, especially if you don't take the time to read the transactions carefully. I don't remember who out of the participants have started their homework or who has finished it, but it can definitely be challenging. If you don't know how to differentiate between assets and liabilities, it's definitely going to be challenging. The good thing is there's not a lot of actual math that we're going to be doing. So basically most of it is, can you interpret the transactions accurately? So that's where most of your time is going to be spent. It is interesting. There is a lot of repetitive work. So definitely be prepared to do the same steps over and over and over again. But that does help get the processes into your memory. So the more you do something, just like when you're teaching your kids to tie their shoes, the more they do it, the easier it becomes. Same thing with accounting. And unfortunately, it can be hard work, especially once we get to around week 5, where we're starting to deal with more forms than we've already been dealing with. At that point, we're going to throw in some additional forms for you to complete. So a lot of students find that to just make the time process even longer when you're already short on time. But it's really not that bad. I promise you. I've been in your shoes, but I was lucky enough to take it face-to-face before Harrison got the whole online program started fully. So I actually had my dad for Accounting 1. So it was an interesting quarter because he never talked to me, never called on me the entire quarter. So, but that's a whole nother story. Setup of the course. Again, we have the modules. So everything is in modules, which is standard Harrison. Let me go back to student view, which is where it should have been. That way you're seeing it from your own perspective instead of mine. Okay. So again, make sure you look at the announcements. It's going to show you the last 3 announcements that I posted. So for this one, it's your week 2 assignments, the week 2 live conferences, when the conferences are, and then navigating course Cengage resources. The navigating Cengage resources is actually put together by Cengage. So that's going to help explain CNOW a little bit more. We do have everything in modules. Make sure you take the time to go through each page. The Welcome Let's Connect has my contact information. My cell phone service where I live is kind of spotty, so the best way is to text or email. The text messages are for a Google phone number, which goes directly to my cell phone. So I will get in touch that way. Introduction to Accounting and Strategies for Success. Those success strategies are actually in CNOW, but they explain a little bit more in depth about how to be successful in the class. We have MindTap Reader, which is a great resource. If you did not notice, you can actually have the textbook read to you. Unfortunately, I have to go in as an instructor. Sample students don't have access to the program. So if you don't feel like carrying your doorstop and accounting book around and you want to read on the go, definitely you can use CNOW. But the good thing is, if you want to listen to the textbook while you're running errands, you can actually click on the face with the audio coming out of it. The textbook will actually be read to you. So you can listen to your textbook while you're doing other things. Or if your kids have some type of sports practice or a dance practice or whatever, you can be reading your textbook while you're taking care of the family. That is a great source to use. Or if you want to listen to it while you're on your lunch break, great. You don't have to carry your doorstop around and you have access to it. So that is definitely a good resource. Wanted to make sure I touched on that. Go back to student view. CNOW, if you're having an issue with something in CNOW and it's not related to the actual assignment, maybe a video or a link is not working, definitely contact CNOW technical support. I have no control over that. If you do have a question on your actual assignment, then definitely contact me. If you're having trouble accessing your Harrison email, your student email, that is when you would contact Harrison Tech Support, and you should be able to, they changed it. It's in the Need Help tab. Here tells you how to contact Harrison Tech Support. And this goes for any of your classes. So it's a great resource to use. Do you guys know how to find the rubrics for your discussions? Because this tells you exactly how I will be grading your discussions. Okay. Last night we had a student that wasn't sure, so I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that I use the same rubric the entire quarter for your discussions. Some students, some instructors vary their rubrics from discussion to discussion. Mine stays the same. Excuse me. Make sure you do the CNOW adaptive study plan each week. It is only worth 10 points, but that 10 points does add up. Make sure you're spending quality time on it. I've had several students last quarter and this quarter spend a minute or two in the adaptive study plan. That's not going to get you your 10 points. One thing I do want to mention, discussions, they are 20% of your final grade, which means if you do not do discussions all quarter and you have an A+ on every other assignment, you're still only going to get a B- in this class. Discussions can help make or break you. By not doing discussions, I've had students fail the class. They've done every other assignment, they've gotten A's and B's on every other assignment, but they didn't do their discussions or they only did them halfway. You more than likely will not pass the class if you do that. So definitely take the time to do your discussions each week. In your discussions, I do require references, especially if you use outside resources. So in week 1, a lot of you would have gotten maybe 9 because you didn't include a reference to the company. This reference cheat sheet does give you examples on how to cite the most common sources. So we have textbooks, journal articles, which we won't use a lot of in this class, online newspaper articles, and websites. So I've done all the hard work for you, but then it gives you actual practical examples of how to cite your information. So definitely try to cite. Even if you completely botch the citation, as long as you provide more than just the URL, you should be good. So I just want to make sure that you guys are practicing using APA. If you have me for payroll, I am a lot more strict in payroll with citations than I am in Accounting 1 because you are further along in your education. And then I also include a debit credit chart, which you're more than welcome to print out. It basically gives you a listing of how to increase or decrease accounts. So it's basically a study guide to help you when you're doing your homework. So I had a student several quarters ago, got her sister-in-law sent her this chart and she posted it in the discussion area and I'm like, I love it. Can I share it with future students? She's like, sure, no problem. So definitely if you need help or if you don't feel like trying to remember debits and credits, which accounts are which, definitely you can print this out. So that is another help that I do provide in the modules. That's pretty much the basic of the modules. You can find your syllabus in the syllabus area. Click to download it. It basically gives you my my late policy, any other information you need to know. I'm not sure if any other instructor has told you before, but it's a great idea to keep copies of your syllabi. If you're going for a job interview, you can actually show them the syllabus and say, this is what I've studied. Or if they ask you if you learned about a specific concept, you can go to that syllabus and say, yes, here we learned the concept and this is what it contained. It's a great thing to keep. Conferences, I will be posting the recordings of the weekly conference, of the Canvas conferences that we're holding. Those are available for 2 weeks in conferences, but within the module, I'll be posting it as well, and that will be there for the entire quarter. So if you need to refresh your memory on something, feel free to go back and watch it. Office hours are in the chat room. So that's basically the setup of the course. Are there any questions on the setup or what I'm expecting?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. One thing I did forget to show you in the modules, there are, starting in week 2, there are sample assignment videos. Most of the time, you guys are going to be completing the A problems. So the videos show me working through the B problems. So you can get an idea of what you should have the assignments look like. So it's just sample problems. They are not required, completely optional. Some students love them, some students hate them, but it's completely optional. So it's just, again, another resource that I provide. Office hours depend on what section you're in. If you're in section 1, it's Wednesdays from 3 to 5. And if you're in section 2, it's Thursdays from 3 to 5. So that just gives you an optional. These are completely optional. It's come and go as you please. If you have any questions, you can just pop in, ask me a question, and leave. Again, completely up to you. Homework expectations, definitely contact me if you're having questions. If you have an emergency come up and you won't be able to get your homework in on time, let me know. I've had several students that are caring for elderly parents, and some weeks are easier than others to get work done. That's fine. Let me know if something comes up and you know you're not going to be able to reach the deadline. I can work with you on the late policy. CNOW, I've had students try to go the entire quarter without using it. You will fail the class because most of your assignments are in CNOW. So traditional due dates, Wednesday night for your initial discussion post, Sunday night for everything else. Again, the discussion requirements are pretty standard, except make sure you do try to include a citation. On some of the discussions where we're going over, you're talking about the business that you wrote up about on assignment 1.4, there's really not going to be any citations. For example, one of the questions, I think it's week 3, you're going to talk about your assets for the business that you would like to create. And so really there's not going to be any references for your assets unless you use a guide to help you develop your assets. So that will not have a reference, so there's no citations needed. My late policy is pretty strict. For 1 to 7 days late, it is 10% off. For 8 to 14 days, it is 20% off. And over that, it is potentially 50% off. The reason it is so strict is that in this class, once you get behind, it is hard to catch up. But again, if you have a family situation that may not allow you to get work done on time in a particular week, let me know and we'll work around the late policy. Family emergencies, death in the family. We have one student this quarter who had a grandparent pass unexpectedly. I'll work with you on the late policy for that. That is a type of situation that you have no control over. Attendance requirements. Harrison recently changed the attendance requirements. As long as you're active in one class, you will not be dropped. If you are not active in any of your classes, the standard 2-week drop policy still applies for all your classes. So definitely at least try to be active. Again, this class is hard to catch up on. It's not impossible, but it is challenging. Any questions on what I expect? It's pretty straightforward, at least I think it is. But I've also been teaching this class for 10 years. So, okay. CNOW. Almost all of your assignments are in CNOW. In week 10, you do have one assignment that you're going to have to download a PDF file to read for your reading for that week, and then complete an Excel spreadsheet. That would be part of your assignment for that week. That is the only assignment that I can think of off the top of my head that is not in CNOW. So you do have CNOW available on iOS and Android devices. So you can do pretty much CNOW anywhere you have access to the internet. So that is a great improvement on what it was before, which was basically Excel spreadsheets. You download the spreadsheet, fill in all the forms manually, save it, send it back, and then wait for me to grade it. This is pretty much automatic. How to use it effectively, make sure you take your time. That is the biggest issue I see with students' grades. They're spending 15, 20 minutes on the assignment, and that's it. So make sure you're taking the time to go through all the information. And that's basically what I have on how to use it effectively. Just take your time. So let's get into what accounting is not, and go through some sample transactions. So accounting is basically a way to keep track of any type of financial transactions. For a business, it could be revenue coming in, expenses going out, purchases made from your business, purchases clients have made from you, but you haven't yet received payment, purchasing gas for a company vehicle, any type of transaction such as that. We will use 3 main financial statements. Those are the income statement, statement of owner's equity, and balance sheet. Those are pretty standard. We do have in week 5, we're throwing in a couple more financial statements. Week 6, we're throwing in another one, and then also a change. So, but basically those are what we're going to use the entire quarter. The income statement and statement of owner's equity stays the same the entire quarter. It's a way to tell the financial health of a business. You can look at a statement of owner's equity or an income statement and see if the company is making money. If you think about investing in the stock market, you want to be able to research a company and figure out whether or not the company is making money before you invest your own money. So accounting would help you learn how to do that. It is usually done by a bookkeeper or an accountant. In the past, bookkeepers would focus solely on one aspect of a business. I've had students that were bookkeepers in the past and they focused only on accounts receivable. Nowadays, companies are cross-training their bookkeepers to focus on multiple aspects. That way, if somebody is out or sick, the work can still get done. And then we're also using the double entry method, which means for every transaction we're going to use, there's going to be at least 2 accounts affected. On some transactions, you're going to have 3, but most everything is going to be done with 1 transaction. Accounting is not your checking account. Students have a lot of trouble with the terms debit and credit. You actually need to forget what you think you know about debit and credit. In accounting, the terms literally mean left and right. So debit is left, credit is right. So, and if you look at your general journal, which we're going to start in chapter 4, I believe, the debit column is on the left, the credit column is on the right. It just varies based on what accounts. If you look at the accounting equation, the left hand of the equation is going to be increased with a debit. The right is going to be increased with a credit. For the most part, there are a couple exceptions, but for the most part, that's how it is. It is not about numbers. It's about, can you dissect the transaction and use the right accounts? For the most part, we're going to be given the numbers we're going to use. And then it does not involve a lot of math. I have a lot of students first week of class say, I'm going to do horrible in this class because I'm terrible at math. For the most part, the math we're going to use is addition, subtraction. That's it. Week 5, we're getting into a little division. Week 8 and 9, we're getting into multiplication. But most of it is straight addition, subtraction. Use your calculator. I have no problems with students using their calculators. When I'm doing the videos, I even use a calculator just to make sure that I'm getting the correct amounts. Even if you're great at mental math, use a calculator to double check yourself or else you're going to be off. That's just a fact. I've tried not to use a calculator. When I took this class, I was a penny off for hours. Finally, I had to give my homework to somebody else and say, here, check it. I can't look at it anymore. I'm completely confused. So definitely use a calculator. I don't care if it's a standard calculator, if it's your cell phone, or if it's a tablet, or if it's the calculator on your computer. Just use a calculator. And it is not something you can get done in 30 minutes. If you've successfully completed the first 2 weeks of homework, you'll definitely know it's going to take you a little bit to do your accounting homework each week. Are there any questions on what it is or is not? Again, if you have any questions, interrupt me, let me know. Okay. Almost getting to the transactions. So my favorite slide is actually this one. Why study accounting? You have to take it to graduate. We've all had classes, especially in high school, where we have to take a specific class to graduate. For me, it was biology. Hated biology. Dissection was not something I liked. So I kind of had my lab partner do all that type of work, but it was required to graduate, just like accounting may be required for you. I know a lot of the medical side, especially the medical office degrees, they require you to have accounting, at least accounting 1. So you're only taking it because you have to. I completely understand that. I completely understand hating the class the entire time. So if you hate it, do not be afraid to tell me you hate it, because I can completely understand. I swore I was going to hate accounting when I took it. So if you hate it and you want to write that in your course evaluation, I hate accounting. It was the worst class I took. That's fine. It's not going to hurt my feelings. So be honest. It does increase your job prospects. A lot of businesses like employees that have had at least some accounting, especially if you're going into an office or a managerial type position. And then it can apply to your everyday life, whether you believe that or not. You can look at your own finances and figure out where you can make changes or cut back based on the principles in accounting. Accounting elements. This is the interesting part. Okay, assets. These are basically things the company already owns. It's things that they have on property. It could be office supplies. It could be cleaning supplies. It could be copiers, computers. Even if the company hasn't fully paid for that item yet, it is still an asset. Company cars, pens, pencils, believe it or not, those are assets. A lot of people look over those small assets. Paper clips are assets. Usually those are all grouped into office supplies, but they're still assets. Liabilities, it's something that a business owes to another. For example, for personal, we take it down to the personal level, your mortgage is a liability. Your car payment, liability. Credit card payments, liabilities. Let's see. If you have a home equity loan, liability. If you have a company, I used to work for a company where it was a water softening company, and customers would come in and buy salt for their water softener, but they didn't pay right then. They paid in a couple of weeks. That is a liability. So any type of agreement with a company where you promise to pay later, that is a liability. My niece dog walks and dog sits and pet sits for people in the neighborhood. She has one customer who works in Chicago, and so she takes care of his cats through the week, and he pays when he gets back in town. That is a liability for him because he still owes her the money for taking care of his cats. So it's pretty much what liabilities are. Owner's equity encompasses so much more than it implies. It's your revenue. It's when the owner takes money out for his personal use. When a lot of businesses are starting, the owners don't take a salary because they can't afford it. So when the owner needs to take money out for personal use, then it's an owner's equity account. Excuse me. Money invested by the owner is an owner's equity account. And your expenses, your rent expense, your water bill, your utilities bill, your gas bill, those are all types of owner's equity accounts. So that's going to help actually on this week's homework and next week's as well. Any questions on the differences between the types of classifications. Okay. The accounting equation. This is actually on your after conference assignment. So basically, we're given the standard format in the textbook of assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. If you think back to algebra, however long ago that was, for me, it feels like eons ago. As long as you know two of the items, you can figure out the third, which means we can take assets minus liabilities equals owner's equity. And we can also take assets minus owner's equity equals liabilities. Any of these three ways is completely acceptable when you're writing the formula. And so that actually does come in play on, I believe, this week's homework, the first couple of problems that you have to do. It's going to give you two amounts and you have to figure out the third. And so you're going to have to use the variations of this formula to complete that problem. So it's a pretty common, easy formula to remember. Okay, we're getting ready to start analyzing there's only 4 transactions that we're going to work through, so it's not gonna take very long. So we do use the double entry method again, like I previously mentioned. That goes through, which basically means we have to have at least 2 accounts affected. It could be 2 asset accounts. It could be an asset and a liability. It could be an asset and an owner's equity. It's not very likely you're going to have 2 liabilities or 2 owner's equity accounts affected, but it is perfectly reasonable and very common to have 2 assets affected. For example, you could purchase office supplies with cash. That's 2 asset accounts that you're going to affect. So that is perfectly fine. And then again, debit versus credit. When you're looking at the problems, especially starting in next week, when we're really hitting the T accounts, debit is on your left, credit is on your right. That's basically really all it means for accounting. So any questions before we begin transactions? Okay. So last poll. How would you write the equation? You're given 5 different options. So this is sort of a trick question. How can we write the account? Assets minus owner's equity equals liabilities. Assets minus liabilities equals owner's equity. Assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. All of the above or none of the above. We have 1 student that responded. Again, trick question. It is actually all of the above. Again, as long as you know 2 of the amounts, you can always figure out the third. So now for the examples. These are taken directly out of your textbook, I believe. These are in chapter 2. So if we are told that Adams invested cash by making a deposit in a bank account for the business for $8,000, what accounts are we going to use? Is it going to be accounts receivable and capital, cash and capital, accounts receivable and accounts payable, or cash and accounts payable? What 2 accounts would we use? So the poll is open. Okay. It is cash and capital. The reason behind that is it tells us what we invested. We invested cash. So we know it's not A and we know it's not C because we're looking for one that gives us cash. We're assuming Adams is the owner. And the key word is invested. It tells us he's putting money into the business. So it has to be letter B. We never use accounts payable or accounts receivable unless the transaction specifically says on account. So if it does not say on account, automatically assume it's cash. That key phrase is going to save you a lot of headaches in the future. So again, if it does not say on account, automatically assume cash. Does that transaction make sense? I have no idea who got it right, who got it wrong. So just want to make sure it makes sense because you're going to have this type of transaction a lot in this class. It's usually the first transaction of any problem we're doing. Okay. The next one is we're paying rent for July of $150. That would be nice if that was the actual price of rent. So what two accounts are we going to use? Would it be rent expense and accounts payable, rent expense and capital, rent expense and accounts receivable, or rent expense and cash? So what accounts would we use? Okay, it is rent expense and cash. Why? Why is it not A, B, or C? They didn't say on account. That's true. So that limits A and C. Why is it not B? That's a tricky one. It's not B because the easiest way to look at it is the owner's name mentioned in the transaction? No. Since it is not entered into the since it's not listed in the transaction, it cannot be a capital. When you have capital accounts, it's going to say the owner's name. So John Doe Capital or John Doe Drawing. That means it's going to not, that those two are the only ways you're going to know it's a capital. So John Doe Capital, which is when he's investing money into the account, or John Doe Drawing, it's when he's taking money out of the account. So other than that, it's going to be the cash. So this is one of the reasons I throw in transactions, try to help clear up misconceptions or unfortunately, the book does not explain it this way. This is called 10 years of teaching the class and learning how to explain it on a more basic level than the textbook. So And this is personal experience since I've actually taken these classes. I know how to explain it so it makes much more sense. The authors teach at four-year colleges. I believe one of them teaches at IU, and I'm not sure where the other one teaches. And so the book is used by a lot of four-year schools, and so it doesn't break it down where it's much more simpler. Excuse me. What the book does really well, though, are the examples and the figures. Those are really what helped get me through the class, as I would spend time studying the examples and the pictures and all the little things that's not the actual verbiage that you're supposed to read. So that helped get me through the class. So on this transaction, we are purchasing tools. Here it says, oops, let me go back. Let's get the pin back up. Here it does say on account. So we definitely know it's not cash. Now, is it going to be accounts payable or accounts receivable? This is where it's a little trickier. At least it was for me when I took this class. Would it be accounts payable or accounts receivable? What's the difference between the two? What's the difference between accounts payable and accounts receivable? Great job, you guys all got it right. But what's the difference between the two? Exactly. One, you're getting money. So on accounts receivable, you're getting money in your business. Accounts payable, you end up paying another company. Accounts payable is an account that our company owes on. Exactly. And so really it comes down to who's receiving the actual cash in the end. Accounts receivable, easy way to remember. Receive, we're receiving the money. Paying, we have to pay another company. So a little trick, play on words to help you remember the difference between the two. So when it's receivable, we're receiving money. When it's a payable, we're paying another company. So, and remember, since it said on account, we can automatically rule cash out of the equation completely. The last transaction, you will see this so much in this class, it's not even funny. We are paying our part-time assistant. What two accounts are we going to use when we're paying our assistant? You'll see this type of transaction at least once a week, if not more so. So it is a very common. We're going to be paying a lot of people in this class. Okay. This one we struggled with somewhat. So because the transaction does not say, oops, drives me nuts. Since the transaction does not say on account, you can automatically rule the first two out. Remember, we're looking for the key phrase of on account to figure out whether it's a payable or a receivable. So now that we have it ruled down to two, 50-50 chance. and it's not capital. So we know it's not this one because it does not say the owner's name. So we're going to have to assume we're dealing with cash. And so it's going to be wages payable since we're paying wages. Sorry, it's going to be wages expense. It's an expense that we have to pay to our employees. It's not wages payable because we're not going to tell our employees, oh, I'll pay you in a week. It's okay. You'll be fine. If our employer told us that, we would be irate. Same thing here. We're not doing an accounts payable. It's not accounts receivable because our employees are not paying us to work for them. So our employees are not paying us money so that they can work for us. So it's not a receivable. We're not expecting money from our employees. And so it's going to be cash. Does this transaction make sense? Since we seem to struggle with this one a little bit more. Okay. Again, we're going to have this type of transaction almost weekly. By the end of the quarter, you will have this transaction down pat. So, any questions on any of the transactions that we did before we move to the financial statements? Okay. So again, the three financial statements that we're going to be dealing with are the income statement, statement of owner's equity, and balance sheet, and they have to be done in this order. You cannot do the balance sheet first, then do the income statement, and then the statement of owner's equity. It has to be this order, and I'll show you why. So here we have the income statement. We're going to list our revenue. For the most part, we're dealing with one revenue account on the homeworks. There are a couple of transactions where we're going to be dealing with two revenue accounts, but most of the time it's going to be one. Then we're going to list all of our expenses. Make sure you list them separately. This picture and the other two pictures we're going to use came off of page 33 in your textbook. So that is the picture I would use for the most part if you need help when completing your financial statements. So that was page 33. So once we list all of our expenses, we're going to add up the expenses, and that's going to give us our net income. And we're going to use this net income amount on the statement of owner's equity, which is why this has to be completed first. And this format does not change the entire quarter. So once you have this down, you're good to go. What I would do is make a mark or somehow flag the page in your textbook so that you can go straight to it if you need to. With CNow, it does give you the basic formatting for this, so it's not going to be as difficult, but definitely I would mark the page somehow. So here we go on to the statement of owner's equity. So here is where the amount comes from the statement of owner, from the income statement. In CNow, if you do not enter in 0 up here at the beginning of the capital for whatever month we're working on, it will count you wrong. So make sure you do enter the 0. You're going to enter the investment. So on the sample transaction 1 that we looked at, this is where we would list the $8,000. So this is where that information would go. And then instead of $2,000, the investment would be $8,000. And so then we have our income from June. This is how much the owner, so less withdrawals would be how much the owner took out during the month for personal use. That's going to give us our increase in capital. And then we're given our capital at the end of the month. Usually businesses work in 1 month periods. If it's a small business, they can do periods of 3 months or even 6 months. Rarely do companies do a period of an entire year. So for the most part, you're going to be looking at a period of a month. Some larger companies may do periods of 2 weeks or even a week at a time to make sure that they stay balanced. And so now we're going to take our capital amount at the end of the month. So we're going to use the bottom of the statement of owner's equity. And that is going to go into our balance sheet. So that's going to go over here. So that is why you have to do each financial statement in the exact order. So here we're going to list all of our assets. Make sure you list them separately. Do not list them as one big lump. You're going to list your accounts payable, which is usually the liability you're going to be dealing with in this class. If you have to take accounting 2 or even accounting 3, you're going to be dealing with multiple liabilities. But pretty much for this class, it's just accounts payable. And then you can see that these two amounts down here, they do total each other. And so that proves that the amounts actually equal each other. However, there is one caveat. If you enter a number incorrectly in an asset and then enter in the same incorrect number in your accounts payable, your amounts will balance, but they won't be the correct number. So in the textbook, I'm not sure if you guys have noticed this yet. Can you guys all see the picture of my textbook? Well, that's just annoying. Okay, I got 1 yes. I got 2 yeses. Okay. So do you see the amounts in green underneath the problem number? You can also look on page 44 in the hardback textbook. If you see the green amounts, not sure why it's stuck. So if you can't see the textbook, underneath the problem numbers, there is green wording. That is going to give you a check figure. So that's going to help you figure out whether or not your answer is correct before you submit the problem within CNOW. So the book provides you a check amount. So definitely use that to your advantage when you're doing your homework. So in case you didn't know that was there, I wanted to make sure I let you know. So are there any questions on the financial statements? Okay. Last thing is the wrap up. Again, office hours are Wednesdays and Thursdays, depending on which section of Accounting 1 you're in. Also by appointment, if those times don't work for you, I'm more than happy to create a virtual meeting within Canvas. So we would use Canvas instead of WebEx if it's just one-on-one. And then we could go over problems that way. Your next week homework is rather long, but it does go fairly quickly. 13, 14, and 15 will in the mastery problem will take some extra time. So definitely plan accordingly. You do have your first exam that covers chapters 1, 2, and 3. So it's just not just a chapter quiz. And I have already posted the exam review. So you can go in and look at what's going to be on the exam and study it before you begin. If there are no questions, that's really all I had. Again, you can text me, email me, You can call me, may not have the best reception that way, but I am very open to any types of communication. And just if something happens, just let me know. I'm more than willing to work around due dates as needed. So if there are no questions, have a good rest of your Saturday.